As the month of January winds down, we are losing the sub-battle against the Tennessee Titans channel here at Chat Sports, which I hate, since they've also got the Bengals offensive coordinator now. Let's make sure we at least win that battle. You get free Bengals videos, and we take down the Titans. Avoid last place among the Chat Sports channels this month. Hit that sub button for me right now. Let's stick with the Titans theme here, and Tee Higgins potentially joining now current Titans head coach Brian Callahan, who I'm sure you guys all know by now, left to take that head coaching job because who could blame him? When Callahan left to go to the Titans, speculation more than anything immediately began about could Higgins go to Tennessee with him? He's a free agent, even though everyone forgets the franchise tag's a thing, which I kind of hate these days. Allegedly, reportedly, the Bengals are open to using the tag on Higgins. If I had to guess right now, in late January, I think that would be the more likely outcome, which means you have to trade for him or, you just keep him for a year or extend him, whatever. But Tennessee does need some wide receiver help. DeAndre Hopkins, aging but was still very productive, relative to expectations last year for Tennessee. Treylon Burks was the first-round pick and will go down as the man they traded A.J. Brown for. It has not worked out at all in Tennessee. I'm not out on him, but not great results. Kyle Phillips can do some slot stuff for Tennessee, but Nick Westbrook-Akina, a.k.a. NWI, is not that great of a player. Chris Moore's kind of okay. You are trying to build around Will Levis, as Brian Callahan saw firsthand in Cincinnati. Putting a bunch of good receivers around your quarterback is a pretty good idea, all things considered. Now, Higgins' numbers were down this year, but he's pretty much viewed as the consensus number one receiver in this free agent class, even over a guy like Mike Evans, because of the fact that Mike Evans is older and aging, etc. there. 1,000-plus receiving yards almost in his first 3 years. Say average about 1,000. Down year this year, injuries to him and his quarterback. Drops a minor issue as well. Higgins will command a high amount of, dollars spent if he does hit the open market. It's also worth mentioning, at least briefly, Sauce Gardner wants him on the Jets too. Because, Gardner knows ball. Not a huge surprise there. The money is a big factor here, both for Tennessee or the Jets or the Bengals or some combination of all of them. The franchise tag comes in around $21 million, give or take some change there. That's going to be the minimum Higgins is going to want per year, which would put in the top 10 receivers. Jamar Chase is going to command probably more than what Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb eventually end up getting from their respective teams. So, that's going to be in the $30 million range. Are you going to spend over $100 million per year? That's not the impact the cap, but that is the actual reality of the per year figures on 3 offensive players. It's a lot of money to spend long term, but in the short term, I'm not that worried about losing Higgins because you have the franchise tag at your disposal. So what is your concern level over losing Tee Higgins, specifically to Tennessee? Scale it for me from 1 to 10 in the comments section. It's at maybe a 3 right now. Longer term, I'm not sure he's going to be in Cincinnati, but when Joe Burrow comes out and says, I expect and want Higgins back here, I think that's kind of the clear path this team is going to go down. I think Burrow made that very clear to the organization, and they'll, keeping your quarterback happy by keeping a great player is normally a good idea. I'm not saying, go full Aaron Rodgers and add washed up guys like Randall Cobb, but Higgins is not. He's still really great, right? I think the franchise tag is a very viable outcome here. It leaves open the door for, a tag and trade, sure. It's not how the Bengals typically operate. Seems worth, considering there. If it is not used, that number does jump significantly for me. Because then it's an open market. Then you got to win the bidding war, or at least hope your receiver says, I'm going to take less or the same to stick around. And that's not always how those things tend to work out. Now, sticking with the offensive side, the coaching search for the coordinator job. The Bengals have interviewed Andy Dickerson for their open coordinator position, which I found interesting and I might argue surprising, given that he was not on my top 10 list. But there are ties to Zach Taylor from their time together in Los Angeles. For now, he is the only reported interview. I will make note you are required to fulfill the Rooney Rule these days for coordinator gigs. Dickerson's career, he began with the Patriots in an operations role, Jets assistant for a couple seasons, Brown's assistant offensive line coach for 2 years. That staff moves on, takes an assistant coaching job with the Jets. Was a longtime Rams assistant offensive line coach from 2012 to 2020. Was there for several years. And then when Shane Waldron, who was the Seahawks offensive coordinator, took the same job with the Bears. When he got that gig in Seattle, he brought Dickerson with him as run game coordinator and also some offensive line coaching responsibilities there. Good chance that continues if Dickerson is not getting an offensive coordinator job. He takes the same job with the Bears under Waldron. I would still argue by a pretty good margin Dan Pitcher is the favorite. Maybe the Raiders are the big threat there since Marvin Lewis will be involved in some capacity. Pitcher coached under Marvin Lewis, beginning his career with Cincinnati as a coach. Lewis was the one who hired him. You could be the full-time play caller. That seems significant. But I think the Bengals are still the likely destination for Pitcher. Just got to work through some stuff and satisfy all the requirements that coordinator searches do demand these days in the NFL. So some patience is needed here. Not going to happen, I wouldn't think, in the next 20 minutes or whatever. But I do think the odds-on betting favorite is still Dan Pitcher to be the Bengals offensive coordinator. So who do you want as the Bengals' next OC to replace Brian Callahan? Sound off for me in the comment section right now. While you're down there, click the link for chatsports.com/Bengals Sideline. These sideline hats are available. Tons of styles, fits, colors, designs, etc. If you are in the market for a new hat, you want to rep the Bengals in the process, this is the way to go. And you know what? If you're a lady out there watching, NFL-themed hat, underrated Valentine's Day gift as we get closer to that date. As I look at producer Chris wearing a hat right now. Chatsports.com/Bengals Sideline. The link will be in the comment section and the description of today's show. All right, let's go to the Mel Kiper mock draft as promised. JC Latham, the selection here out of Alabama, which we have talked about in some of our previous mock drafts and our draft targets. We'll do more mock drafts, don't worry. I think it makes a ton of sense. Here was the argument from Mel Kiper in his ESPN write-up. We could see a run on offensive linemen beginning around here, Mel said. This is a really talented tackle class. I have 7 tackles, ranked among my top 25 overall prospects. Latham started 27 games at right tackle for the Crimson Tide over the past 2 seasons. He can maul defenders in the run game, but he's also light on his feet as a pass protector. With Jonah Williams headed to free agency, Latham could slot in on the right side and be an instant starter. I could also see the Bengals look towards the defensive tackle class with Jer'Zhan Newton out of Illinois and Devontae Sweat also available. So grade the JC Latham pick for me. We'll spend some more time on other guys in Latham in particular. A, B, C, D, or F. Go ahead and sound off for me in the comment section right now. I would be fully on board with this selection. I think you're filling a need. You're getting a plug-and-play starter on the offensive line and a guy that fits what your typical MO has been up front. You want a bigger body offensive lineman who also does move well, by the way. That would certainly be Latham, and that is something that you are looking to add because Jonah Williams is a free agent. Didn't get beat that much in pass protection this past year. Latham did. I know it's another Alabama offensive tackle. Maybe you got some trauma there. That's fine. Don't freak out about it. You are in position to potentially get a great offensive lineman. And I think adding to the trenches in general is something this team needs to do this offseason. It doesn't have to be only through the draft, but you need to add some more talent there. So some others on the board who are at least worth mentioning here. We'll spend some time on this. 5 on offense, 5 on defense. A lot of offensive linemen here because the only 2 guys went before that pick for Mel. I was kind of surprised by that. Possible, but I think there might be one guy who goes earlier, probably Latham. Troy Fontenot, I think probably be a left guard for you. Some right tackle options, Taliesin Fuaga, Amarius Mims out of Georgia. Both guys who are mostly right tackles in college. Upside, talent, run blocking, they got you covered there. Jordan Morgan, Kingsley Suamataia, both offensive tackles. More left side guys, but you can flip them over if you need to. Defensively, not just Jer'Zhan Newton and Devontae Sweat, like Mel mentioned. I would not sleep on Byron Murphy. Depending on what you do at nose guard, Murphy is more of a 3 technique type. That would go a long way to helping build out your defensive line. Sweat, I don't love him in the top 20, but if you want to know who's going to be the best one this year, right? Jared Verse, top edge rusher, was on the board. So too was Kool-Aid McKinstry, who I think is a very, very promising football player at corner. You don't need one, but you're not going to go safety or linebacker in round one, so I wanted to at least mention one of the top corners who was left.